Hi, my name is Colleen, and today I'm going to share with you some of the things that the Lord King Yeshua HaMashiach asked me to share with you. The Lord King Yeshua HaMashiach took me on a journey, a spiritual journey, from 2015 to 2020. Okay, so we continue with the story of us. Okay, today I'm going to summarize some of the things that were being created in the city of darkness. And the children were in the place of darkness. They were transforming and creating. And they were creating very beautiful things in the darkness. But as I say, when you take these things that are created in darkness and bring it into a place of light, they don't look that bright. They look dark and dull. And this is the same beings who are creating. And this is the same person. She's more transformed, more pronounced. And they are transforming into more things. And this is the place, the city of darkness that they create. It's not a city like we call a city. And they are bringing down their creations, placing them in the city of darkness. And they are going to be creating here more and more things. And as they were creating more things, they were thinking of different ways to express things that were opposite to what their parents were creating. And their parents were very happy all the time. And they tried to think of what unhappy would be like. But they thought for a very long time, and they tried to transform themselves into what unhappy is like, but they couldn't. They were infinite beings, and unhappiness just couldn't come to them because they were always so happy and blessed, and they were infinite beings. They can do whatever they want. They go wherever they want, do whatever things they felt like doing, and there was no reason to be unhappy. So they said, okay, maybe unhappy is not for us, but let's put that aside and think of other things we can do. So they're like, okay, their parents work together all the time, and so they sent one of them out to be alone by themselves. But because they were, again, infinite, eternal beings, they were never really alone. They sent the person out, and they could hear everything they were thinking. Were telepathic, so they were never really alone. And so they tried different things. And someone said, the only way we can actually do these things that are opposite is if we forgot who we were. And so they created something called forgetting or not remembering. So they will not remember that they were infinite, eternal beings with infinite potential to be and create whatever they chose. And so a few of them were chosen to go through the process of forgetting. And some of them are like, I like being infinite and eternal, and I don't want to forget who I am. And some of them was like, okay, I'm willing to try it, but not forever, just for a little while. And so they went through the process of forgetting who they are. And so now what? They forgot who they were, and they forgot what they were. And when they forgot who they are and what they were like, okay, now what do we do with them? And they didn't recognize them. They're like, who are you? And they're like, this works pretty good. And so they came together and they're like, okay, so we were successful. And we know it's not going to be forever, so what do we do? And they decided to tell the person, the beings that chose to forget, give them a narrative that were on or not. They told them they were created from this dark place. They didn't tell them they were created from light. They said, oh, you were created from this dark place, and we are your leaders, and you will do what we say. And they're like, oh, okay, so who are you? I said, we are your appearance. We created you from all of this darkness. And so they went along with it for a little while, and then they began remembering. So the game was over. And so they came together and they thought about things that they can tell the beings that went through forgetting. And so they came up with some things. They told them about being limited. They couldn't do this, they couldn't do that, they couldn't do the other. And they would feed them this narrative about being limited beings. And they would believe it for a little while, and then they would remember who they are. So they're like, this forgetting needs to be a little longer so that we can play a little bit more with it and see how it turns out. So a few beings decided to, okay, let's go along with this a little longer. So they prolonged it. And so the forgetting was a lot longer. And the beings that forgot, they were told they were created from the darkness. Beings, they separated the beings, and some of them were told one narrative, and the other one was told another narrative. And they were both told that is the truth. And so they would, when they met each other, they would like talk about what truth was and the things that were actually. And they would begin arguing about what truth was. One would say, truth is this, and the other one would say, truth is that. Because those are the narratives they were fed while they forgot. And so at first they were arguing, and then they began fighting over what truth was. And as they grew, more people came into the forgetting because they thought it was fun watching them argue about the narratives they were being fed. And they're like, oh, let's go into this and see where this leads. So more of them went in, and they began to fight over what truth was. They were told different dogmas and different doctrines, different beliefs and things like that. And they went to war about these doctrines. And the beings that were watching them from afar, they were like, this is crazy. And so war began. And it continued for a while, and then they got like bored of it. And so they fed them different narratives. They were like, okay, guys, y'all can't do war anymore. Because then they created something called death. Okay, so now death occurred this way. A being would be killed, and then they would simply disappear from the view of all the other beings, but they actually went back into the place of darkness, and they were watching the whole thing. And so the other beings who didn't know what death was, they were like, where did they go? And they were sad. They were their friends, their comrades would just disappear, and they would be very, very sad. And they're like, where did they go? They're dead. And they're like, we had to stop killing each other. And some of them were like, yeah, but, you have to believe what we believe, because what we're saying is truth. And our God told us this, and our God told And so they continued with this for a little while. And then they decided, okay, since we're losing all these people, we don't want to lose everybody, so let's stop doing this. And so the beings came to them, the higher beings came to them and gave them another narrative. And they told them they had to build buildings and do all kinds of different things. And they created things called needs. Who ever heard of such a thing? So they told them they needed to eat. And then after a while, they needed to sleep. And they made things up as they went along. And they created things like pooping and peeing. And after a while, they created things like sex. You needed to do these things. These things were created, and then they created things called lack, where people who needed stuff just didn't have it. They didn't have food to eat, so they died, and they went back into the place of darkness and watched their comrades. So the people who forgot, they were very sad when their loved ones went away. And so they found out what unhappiness is like, one of the uns that were created. But that was unexpected. So the beings above were looking and say, this is what it means to be unhappy. And then they created food shortages where the things that you needed were not available. Where did they go? Where did they come from in the first place, right? So they created lack and unkindness because everyone needed the same thing and it was limited. So those who needed it would go and get what they needed, and then there was no more for anyone else. And they would starve and die. And so they went to the beings that came to us and said, why don't you create more? You're great and mighty. Why don't you create more food for us so we all have enough? And they're like, okay, we already see what lack and poverty is like, so let's create more food for them. And so they did. And everybody was happy for a little while. And they created other things like this. So some of the beings volunteered for the forgetting. There were 4 beings that were chosen that would never forget, so that if the others went into forgetting, too far into forgetting, there will always be someone to pull them back and help them remember who they were. And so one of the beings was called Alcazar. And here she is. She's a beautiful being, and she's this turquoise color. And she asked me to share with you a picture of herself, a painting of herself, and so you can know who she is. Now, she is in contact with some of you on the earth today. She's one of the 4 beings that is here to help us remember who we were. And this is her. Also, this is the dress. After a while, she transformed a little bit more. And when I saw her, she was very beautiful and very graceful. She just came out to me like this, like kind of like, and she turned around, looked at me, and I think she was smiling. And she looked straight at me, and then the vision was over. And she wanted you to know that she's one of your brothers and sisters, that is trying to help you to remember. And so they are here on the earth. Now, after a while, when they were created in the darkness, they were like, okay, we've created all of this. I think we've gone far enough into the darkness, so let's start bringing our people out of forgetting. And they began, it was quite a long time. And some of the people that came out, they were fine. And so they came out of the darkness and they went back into the city of light. And they began creating with their parents, and they were happy. Now, some of the others, when they were given remembering, they denied that those things that they were told about themselves were true. Because they have been very long into the forgetting, and they believed more about the narratives they were told than their actual selves. And this created a problem. So the four beings went to the city of light, to their parents, and asked them for help. So 5 of the parents came and they observed the things that they were doing. Well, they've been observing them. And they saw the denial of remembering, the doubt, and the great fear that fell upon the beings that were told who they were, where they're from. And so they're like, oh, okay. So maybe this is too sudden for them. So let's create somewhere that is more gradual, that they're not coming straight out of darkness into light. So they created a place of shadows where the darkness and the light can dwell together, and they can come gradually out from the darkness into the light. And so this is our universe that was created, a place of shadows where darkness and light can dwell together. And at first it was only 3 levels: the darkness and the light, and then the light. And this worked for some of the beings very well, but for others they were still struggling. So more levels were created, and they kept on being created until we got to the 13 levels, which we have right now. So the purpose of the 13 levels, or this universe of shadows, is to do 2 things: help you gradually remember who you are, and to bring you from darkness into the light. And it's gradual. So this is our universe that we're living in right now, a place of shadows where darkness and light dwells together. As you can see, the sun is shining and creating shadows. And there is darkness where the shadow is. And we have night and day, good and bad, good and evil, happy and sad. And all these things are present here. And each being is given specific experiences to help bring them out from darkness into light, from forgetting into remembering. And it's a gradual process. Now, this number here is a number of remembering, 0010110. It's a code number that is given to us that will help us remember, help us begin remembering. So you can look up, you could Google this number, and you can see what other people thought about the number, what they began remembering, and what you begin remembering and understanding about this number, 0010110. Okay? And it's a code of remembering. I'm going to share with you now some of the things that will place in the place of shadows. And remember, it always happens that they go into the place of shadows and then they begin transforming into what darkness and light dwelling together would be like. And then they take those things and put them into what they call the city of shadows. Right now, city of shadows for us are a bunch of planets. And so they came together and began transforming, have dark, light. This is like a root foot type of thing, transforming, creating. And this that I showed you before, the beings coming together, the darkness and the light being pulled together. And this is one of the things they created. It kind of looked like a heart or internal organ type of creature. Okay, here are some of the things, the places they created. Have dark blue, light blue, all kinds of different shadows. And eventually they kept creating, and up to what we have today. So here's some of the things, the places and things. There we go, dark and light. Dark and light together. And the place where there's dark and light, dark to light. And this is one of the beings that I showed you before, flying through the air. See, there's dark and then there's light. So, and they took some of the things that they created in the city of light and in the city of darkness, and they brought them in. And so we have this universe that we are in today. And we call this our home. But it isn't. It's a place where we were placed by our parents who love and care for us. And we have been fed many narratives. And we have gone through wars and arguments over dogmas and doctrines that one side was fed. And these are things that we created in darkness. And so we are allowed to experience darkness and light. And we take a good look at it. And we are given the opportunity to move into one or to the other and choose which one we want. And like I said, the purpose is to move us from darkness into light and forgetting into remembering. But we are allowed to play here for as long as we wish. So at this time, we are given an opportunity to move on from 3D to 4D to 5D. And now in 5D, you are allowed to go into 5D, into the light, or 5D, into the darkness. Now, there are not many people on our earth that went into 5D, into the darkness. Just few. You have to be quite evil and want to do evil things continually in order to go from 5D into the darkness. Now, next time I will be talking more about going from 3D into 5D. So this concludes the story of us so far. Okay? Now, I did not go into much details about all the things that occurred in the darkness or in the place of shadows. If I were to go through all the things that will happen, the whole universe will be filled with videos, nothing but videos about what we did, what we created. So I summarized it. But you can look around and you could imagine the things that we created. And we did that for a very, very, very long time. And so many things were created. We took part in it. Good, bad, evil. We created it. And we took part in it. Because it was just a new experience. And we were finding out about the darkness. Whatever that was. Okay? So when you begin remembering what you are doing, don't think of it as good or evil. Just think of it as something we did. We were experimenting, experiencing what darkness was. And so I conclude with you the story of us. God bless you, and see you next time when we discuss moving into 3D into 5D. God bless you, and goodbye. So we'll continue next time. Thank you, and God bless you.